Welcome to One Conversations, a Better Together podcast where we look at some of the articles that have appeared in the One magazine and we talk to one of the authors there. So today we have Mr. David Brown with us. And David, it's so good to have you as our leader of our foundation. And I was looking in the October-November 2020 edition, and there's an article entitled Men at Work. So we want to encourage everyone to either go online to onemag.org or get the hard copy and read this edition, read the article called Men at Work by David Brown. But David, give us a quick synopsis. This is a personal article, isn't it, called Men at Work?
Well, it's mostly about bi-vocational pastors, part-time pastors, whatever you want to call them. And my dad was one of those kind of guys, and so I think I have some insight into some of the things that they go through. And so I just kind of point out some of the things that the way he felt, and I think it's the way a lot of the bi-vocational pastors feel, and some ways that we can help them and do some things that would help them to be more involved in local, state, and national ministries.
Mm-hmm. And so your dad did what he could to be as involved as he possibly could be. There's a lot of bivocational pastors out there, at least I believe you cited 35%. We believe in some states it's even higher. Oh, yeah. And in many ways, as you think about the history of the Free Will Baptist denomination, those folks were our foot soldiers.
Yeah, I was going to say it probably used to be 100%.
Yeah, probably did, and in some places, that is pretty close to that today. So really, we're seeing more and more people, I think, go into bivocational ministry, but they can still be involved in denomination. They can still be involved in many ways, just like the so-called full-time fellows can as well. Tell us a bit about some of those ways.
Well, of course, there's two different kinds of bivocational pastors, I guess you would say. There are those who are bivocational because the church is too small to provide them a full-time wage. And in some cases, there are bivocational pastors who they choose to do it that way. The church may actually be large, but they choose to have a bivocational pastor either because the pastor wishes to be that way or the church still wishes them to be that way. So it depends on the situation. But I'm going to primarily talk about the situation where the church is just too small. And I think one of the things is that you need to understand is when a guy pastors 50 people or less, he wants to feel like he's more involved than that, and that the world is a lot bigger than that 50-member church that he's a part of. And so for those guys, in a lot of ways, I think the district, state, and national ministries is more important to them maybe than a larger church, because they want to feel like they're part of something larger. Mm-hmm. And, when they go to the district and they see the district's doing some things together that is going to benefit them and benefit other ministries and reach the lost, that makes them feel better. And then they go to the state and there's even more things going on for their church and to reach folks. And then you go to the national and it's even more. And it's one thing to pastor a church of 50 people and feel like you're out there on an island, but to know that you're not on an island, that you're actually a part of a really big movement, I think helps them to feel much better about that 50-member church.
Yes. So let's just walk through that for a little bit. Let's say that you're a pastor. Let's say, all right, you've got 50 people in your church, but then you go to your association meeting. Maybe it's a small association with only 3 or 4 churches, or it could be a big one, like maybe 15 or 20. So when that pastor is going to those association meetings, they're rubbing shoulders with other pastors and often their families and lay people. So that's iron sharpening iron. They're benefiting as well as those other people are benefiting from their input. And let's say they serve on a ministerial standing committee or they're one of the executive officers of their association. Then all of a sudden, they're impacting not just their one church, but those other 6 or other 20 or whatever churches, it kind of goes out.
Right, and you have a lot more influence too. I know in my dad's situation, he served a number of years on the executive committee, which was the ordaining committee of the association he was a part of, and that gives you a little bit more, feel like you're doing more than just your 50-member church.
Oh yeah,
you're helping other churches as well.
So each person that goes through that ordaining council, often they've met with them before the ordaining. Often they meet with them after, kind of serve as mentors or maybe even informal coaches. So every person that comes through that, they've had quite an influence on that. Then you jump it up to the state level, and they serve on a committee, but whether they do or not, you can have 75 to all the way out to almost 200 in some states. So that's a big time influence. And then let's say they are able to participate in the national. They go occasionally. Well, then you're in with 2,000 plus churches, and think about not just what happens in the United States and North America. It's really an international impact as well. So what you were trying to say is a person that's a bivocational pastor should never feel like they have a small footprint, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. And the thing is, I think our districts and our states can do some things to help them. Sometimes it seems to me that districts and state associations, they set their schedule according to full-time pastors, and makes it difficult for bivocational men to be there without taking off work, which, my dad took off work anyway. Yeah. But not every bivocational pastor can do that. So if you can figure out some ways, and I understand there's usually evening services for every state and district association. Maybe not in district; there might just be a daytime. But there's other ways. Maybe they can bring them in. But keep that in mind when you make your schedule, and don't just think about the full-time guy that can be there anytime.
Right. So let's talk through that for a little bit. It's not just to the bivocational pastors trying to say you're important, trying to also say to our association, state, and even on the national level, please understand the importance of bivocational folks and trying to bring them in. And I think it's also, we'll just go ahead and say these folks have a different type experience often. They often have a certain trade or certain level of expertise that can be helpful on the association, state, and national level. I think that's your own foundation. You've got a foundation board, and so it would be helpful to have a pastor bivocational that's also a banker. And I noticed the Welch board, we have Mike Armstrong on that, who's also an educator. He helps out in his church. You could almost see him as bivocational a little bit, but those people bring a different kind of mindset, don't they?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I have said this before to a number of people, and especially to some of our colleges, that I'm not so sure, but what the best thing that you could do for a young pastor is for him to be a bivocational pastor right out of school. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is he gets a taste of what it's like in the real world.
Yes.
And also, he actually may have more opportunities to share if he's a bivocational pastor than, just a full-time pastor where you go and sit in your office, or hopefully you do more than that. But if you're actively rubbing shoulders with people in the secular world, you can actually have a pretty good ministry that way. And plus, I think it would give some of our guys that graduate college with a lot of debt an opportunity to work a full-time job and a part-time job to try to get some of the debt out of the way, too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So then they're not saddled by debt, and they're wanting to start a new family if they're young, right, and so forth. So I think you're exactly right. And then I will say I was a bivocational pastor for almost 20 years, and I think it's helpful for the church. I think in many ways we hired 2 other staff members, and it allowed us to do that,
Right.
because we could spread our resources more, and we could give back more as
Yeah,
well.
and I've seen that, a lot of places in our country, you don't necessarily have a full-time pastor, but you may have a full-time associate or youth minister or different other things, and that can work very well a lot of times too. So it's not limited. Bivocational pastors are not limited to small churches.
Mm-hmm. And in other podcasts we've talked about giving and the importance of that and using estate plans. But a lot of the data indicates that it's going to be more difficult in the future for churches. And, we also wonder, will we always have tax-exempt status? So it's important for ministry folks to think about being bivocational, and churches think about that as well, because that could be it. Let's go back to your dad for a bit. So he served, he ministered, he passed away recently. But his ministry did not end with his death, did it?
No, it didn't. I think it was interesting that throughout his life, he was interested in helping Welch and missions. He always gave to those 2 ministries, and he started out with Welch with those checkbooks that Paul Ketterman used to push all the time. And he started out at $5 a month. I think, by the time, of course, people who don't know, my dad developed Alzheimer's in his latter years. He wasn't aware of, what he was doing. But as long as he had his, faculties, he was giving to both those ministries. And he worked his way up to $25, dollars a month to Welch. Mm-hmm. And a number of years ago, back in the 90s, I guess, Arkansas, which is where he was from, developed the Acts 1-8 program, and he started giving $100 a month to it, which in Arkansas it went to both home missionaries and international missionaries. Well, he died, and him and mom died 6 years earlier, and Dad was the last to die, and he tithed on his estate. Well, guess what? The amount that his tithe was, when you put it in endowment, was enough to give $100 a month to the Acts 1-8 program and $25 a month to Welch. So that'll just keep on going.
How about that? So that's the power of estate planning and what you guys do at the foundation. Exactly. He's with the Lord in heaven, but he's still giving. Exactly. And it's as far as that goes, it's like he's still here, but that gift, because of the way this works, it continues till the Lord comes back. Exactly. Yeah. Oh, that's pretty powerful stuff. Yeah, it is. It does go to. It reminds me of the parable of the talents, and so some people may be like, well, I've only got this amount of money or that, but think about how he took that. And it's continuing to be a benefit until Christ returns. That's really what the Lord's called us to do, be good stewards of what we have. Yeah. Well, David, we thank the Lord for your dad's life, for his ministry, for being willing to be a bivocational minister. We thank the Lord also for how he used his resources well. Undoubtedly, as a bivocational pastor, used his time well, but he used his monetary resources well too, so that they continue to give to the Lord's work until Jesus comes back. So thank you for that, and thank you for the foundation, for what you all do. So folks know, I think, that they could set up their own estate plan by contacting you all. Yeah. You all do some great things. They could also invest money through the foundation. And so give us your number and the way they can contact the foundation if they would like.
Okay, well, toll free, it's 877-336-7575, or our general email is foundation@nafwb.org, or you can just email me directly at david@nafwb.org.
Excellent. Well, thank you, my brother, for stopping by and being with us today, and thank you to all our listeners for stopping in. We want to encourage you to subscribe to One Magazine if you've not already done that, Every 2 months, you'll get a hard copy of One Magazine, but you could always go to the One Magazine website, and we encourage you to do that, to read the articles there, to share them with people on social media and different places. And also, we encourage you to share this podcast. Share it with friends and family. Go online and like it on social media, and do what you can, if you are able, to review it. And every little thing you do counts, because we truly are better together. Thank you for joining us today.